Hello all, this is the first session for the Level 2 Games Design Intro to Maya. Now, this is presuming you've never touched Maya before, so we're going to start from the very basics and work up through the first session for the 3D modeling unit. First thing first you need to do is to look for the Maya icon. It should be Maya 2018, or depending on when you're actually watching this, it could be 2019, 2020. But anyway, you're looking for an M with the year on. So just simply double click that and we'll get started. It will take seconds to click past. You'll see all the nice things starting up. You'll have the windows opening and then you'll get this new features highlighted here, which obviously if you've never done Maya before it won't really matter to you. So we get to this point here where you'll always get this loading up. So just first of all click OK and then just wait for it to settle down. So we're looking at the standard Maya interface. We'll get used to using keys, combination of keys, and the actual interface itself. Right, whenever you start up Maya for the first time, if you've never opened it before, there'll be a couple of things just to double check just before you actually start modeling with anything. You'll see at the top here spheres, cubes, cylinders, cones, torus, that's a donut, flat plane, and there's a circular flat plane or polygon disc, and so on and so forth. There's only a handful of them there. You'll see the rest of them in this create menu up here. It's polygon primitives, spheres, cubes, cylinders, cones, toruses, planes. You can have a play with those later on. If you've never opened up Maya on your computer before, the default settings for Maya tend to be if you click on a polygon model, such as a polygon cube here, it'll appear dead in the center. Now this can be a problem because it means you have to change the shape of it, move it around, and particularly if you've got a very busy kind of playing field where you've got lots of models open, it will get in the way. So first things first, we need to double check and make sure it's got some interactive creation on. So first of all, if you've never opened it before, click on the create menu, go down to polygon primitives and make sure this interactive creation is ticked. It may be ticked, it might not be, but it's always worth checking if Maya's been opened for the first time. So make sure that's clicked on and it'll make life a lot easier. So first things first with Maya, when you first open it up, it does look complicated. You've got lots of menus that you can click through. You've got lots of on-screen graphical shelves, is what they're called, which you can actually end up moving around. If you end up any difficulties, just have a word with myself and we can sort it out again, particularly in the early days. The interface is fully customizable, so once you get used to it, you can start maybe getting rid of the polymodeling graphical user interface up here. Maybe just start using the menus, because you'll notice up here there's only a handful of polymodeling primitives. Primitives are the basic shapes you can start building more complicated things from. So sphere, cube, cylinder, cone, torus. That's a polygon plane in this case. There's another polygon plane there which is circular. That's what is known as a platonic solid, as it says. If you hold the mouse button over it, it'll tell you what they are. I might use some of them and maybe not others. We're just going to start to create our first model. We've made sure that the create and the polygon primitives menu is set on interactive creation. I'll show you the reason why you wouldn't leave the interactive creation off, but it's really handy in the early days. We click on the cube like that. You'll see it says drag the base of the grid and pull up for the height. So it gives you some instructions. You'll notice the cursor has changed, so it's an arrow with a little square next to it and an arrow pointing out. So we hold the left mouse button down over the area, and you'll see you can actually change the size, but keeping the left mouse button down until you're happy with the size of the flat plane that we're first creating. Release the mouse button and you'll see the cursor changes again. It says drag up to set height. So press the left mouse button again, and you'll see it gives you this height change here, and you can either put it down or above and release it. So if we want, we can actually create a little cityscape just with cubes. I'm just going to put a few of these around like this. And there we go. We've created a few cubes. If we wanted to, we could put a sphere in there. You notice the sphere acts slightly differently. You hold the mouse button down and you're changing the diameter of the sphere. The cylinder is very similar to the cube. You start with the ground plane, hold the mouse button down, and then press it and push it up. So we've got a few cubes and a cylinder and a sphere there. Just for the minute, I'm going to delete this sphere. As you'll notice, we haven't really done much, but if you click around, anything highlighted green is selected. Now we'll get some more complicated selection processes sorted out soon, but in this case, we just click around and you can see everything's just being selected. If I wanted to get rid of anything I don't like this sphere, because it'll probably get in the way, you just select the sphere and just hit the delete key and it'll disappear. You can do that for anything if you want to get rid of things. Now at the moment we haven't really manipulated the view. We don't know how to look on the other side. If we wanted to create a cube on the other side of this large cube in the middle, we can't really see the other side. So we're going to start getting used to 3 keys that we're going to get used to throughout the whole process. These 3 keys allow us to move items around. We also want to manipulate the view. So to manipulate the view, we're going to start using the Alt key on the keyboard in combination with various mouse buttons, left, middle, and right. As you can see, we can select the different primitives. We get used to the word primitives. Primitives are the basic shapes, 3D shapes, and then expand beyond that so we can maybe change the size of cubes. We'll look at things like extrusions, which means like pulling sides out. We'll be manipulating the different parts of the cube, but we'll leave that for a later session. For the minute, we're just getting used to the interface and how to manipulate the view and the objects themselves. Let's have a look at the different key combinations to actually rotate the view, to zoom in and out, and to pan the view left and right and up and down. So first things first, if you put your finger onto the Alt key, so we're using the Alt key at the moment, I've got my finger on the Alt key now, and if you use the right mouse button, you'll see the cursor changes. And now if you hold the Alt key down and you're holding the right mouse button, if you push the mouse forward and push the mouse back, you'll see it zooms in and out. And release the mouse button. Now if you use the mouse wheel, you'll also zoom in and out. Now keeping your finger on the Alt key, we can actually press the middle mouse button down and you'll see the cursor again changes. We can actually pan around the view like that. Release the middle mouse button, which is also the wheel. So switching between the right mouse button and the middle mouse button, you can pan, you can zoom. And the next one, we want to be able to see on the other side of that. So we do this. Holding the Alt key down and the left mouse button, we can rotate around the view. So this Alt key is pretty much important. Okay, without the Alt key, you're just selecting objects in the scene. So we're rotating around the view. We're not rotating the objects themselves, we are rotating the camera around the objects. So it's as if you're just flying around the scene. So if I wanted to rotate to the other side, release the mouse button, release the Alt key, and maybe put another cube in the back there, I can do that So Alt key, right mouse button, zooming in and out, Alt key, middle mouse button, pan, and Alt key, left mouse button, rotate. So that allows you to rotate around the scene and add objects pretty easily. Next up, we're going to manipulate the objects themselves. So, as we've seen before, if you click on any of the objects in the scene, making sure the Alt key is not on, left click, left click, left click, around the scene, you can select the objects. You'll notice that they're all on green outline. This is presuming that your interface for Windows is set all the same kind of colors. So Alt key, I'm just going to manipulate the view so it's a bit more central. Now we're going to manipulate one object in the scene, and then we'll just finish this session. As I said, you can click around and select an object. Say for example we wanted to move this cube over to this corner over here. Now I'm going to manipulate the view so I can see overhead more, like this. And we want to move this object from here over to here. But we do this by using 3 more keys. So we know how to use the Alt key. We're going to use the W, E, and R keys. These allow you to rotate, move, and scale the object. Now you'll see at the side here on the menu, you've got like a selection tool, got like a polygon selection tool. If you're familiar with Photoshop, these are very similar to that. But you'll also notice underneath here, you've got if it comes up, you've got the move tool, you've got the rotate tool, you've got the scale tool. Now first things first, we're going to use the move tool. Now, as you'll notice there, it says move tool W. Get this wrong. It says rotate tool E, and scale scale tool is R. Annoyingly, the rotate tool isn't R, it's actually E. So as long as you keep your fingers next to the W, E, and R keys, you'll be able to move, you'll be able to rotate, and you'll be able to scale. We're not going to think about the scale tool yet. We're just going to manipulate what we've actually created in the scene so far. If you hit the W key, you'll notice the move tool is highlighted. You don't need to hold down the keys, you just simply toggle between them. You can actually click on these interfaces and select them manually like that, or you can just use the W, E, R keys and you'll see go W, E, R, W, E, R, E, W. You'll notice whilst we're doing W, E, R that the cursor within the scene will actually change. If you've got an object selected like that, you'll see the manipulation tool will also be changing. Now if I go to the W for move, you'll notice we've got X, Y, and Z coordinates. So W, click on your object, and rotate it a bit more so we can actually see the X, Y, and Z. You'll notice at the bottom corner here, you've got Y, Z, and X. Now if you've done any kind of 3D modeling before, sometimes the Z-axis is pointing up, so you've just got to get used to that. We're on the move tool. We've got the move tool selected there with the W. Just hit the key again. And if you hold the mouse, move the mouse around the 3 axes, you'll see it highlights in yellow. You've also got the controller in the middle. Now I recommend early days to actually just manipulate your objects in the X, Y, and Z. So for example, if I wanted to move it, and you'll see it's red there, and you'll see down the bottom here is X. So if we wanted to move it in the X direction, you move the cursor over the X axis, hold the mouse button down with nothing else, you'll see it highlights, and then you can move it. Just drag the mouse. We said we wanted to move this one over here, over to this corner. So combination of the move tool, the rotate, the view. We can move it like that. We can shift it over here. Use the Alt key, move the view around so we can actually see where it is. So we're moving it. We can also do the rotate tool, so that's the E key. You've got 3 axes. Now, it's easier when you're actually creating it off the ground plane like that to rotate around the green axis, which is the Y. Particularly when you're rotating buildings, you don't want a building to look skew or hover on over the floor like that. Also, if you've made a mistake and you don't want it to be where it is, just as the same as any other package where you want to undo something, just do Ctrl-Z and it'll do the last command. You can actually do Ctrl-Z a few times and it will actually take a number of commands back. If you've gone too far ahead, you want to undo a few series of commands that you've done, you can just keep Ctrl and Z. I think if you do the edit, you can also Ctrl and Y, which is redo. So if I wanted to do and put that back to where I had it before the rotate, Ctrl and Y, and there we are. Okay. Now, whenever you create an object, it will create it on the ground plane. And there are other ways of moving the object around, but this is the first session, so all we're doing is just manipulating the objects, rotating the objects, and getting used to the interface. We've done move, which is W. If you want to move it far out, you can zoom out a bit, move it way out, rotate your view with the Alt and the left mouse button. You do things like that. So I'm making a little city view, just like this. Zoom in, simply with the middle mouse button. Holding the Alt key, you get a smooth zoom in and out. So if you just rotate the middle mouse, it'll just step in and out. Now it is possible, at some point, you may accidentally zoom out too far, or zoom in too far. So we can actually go to View, and we go to Default View. So View, Default View, it'll reset the view back to initial settings. So if we've rotated it, we've zoomed out, we've panned over here, go to View, Default View, we'll use the Alt and Home key, click on that, and it'll reset. So it'll always go back to the center. Now, one thing I haven't talked about is the actual grid. The grid itself is just an indication of where the center of this infinite amount of space is. You can actually go beyond that, obviously, but this is just an indication when you're actually creating objects in a 3D scene. We can do things like that. So default view will reset the view back to where we started if you ever get lost. Scale. So we've done W for move, E for rotate, R for scale. Now we can scale again. If you select one of the axes, you can scale in a particular axis. You can also scale up, but as you'll note, when you're scaling up, the origin point of every single 3D model that we've got is in the middle. So if we're scaling, it's going to scale from that origin point, which means that you might break the ground plane there. So we can move it. Let's have a look. We're going to look at later on in some other sessions some more precise ways of manipulating. But for the first session, all we're doing is getting used to the interface. I'm going to set this back to default view. We'll zoom out a bit so we can see what we've created. W, E, and R. If you want, you can reset it so it's away from the W, E, and R, and it's the Q, which just happens to be the next key along. As I say, if you hit Q, you can just select your objects. If you want to get rid of something, just select it, hit the delete key. So just to go over this session, is basically using the interface, creating some simple primitives, and also manipulating those primitives in 3D space. So just to go over again, to rotate the view, Alt key, and hold the left mouse button down, and you can rotate the view. Holding the middle mouse button, the middle wheel, you can pan the view. Holding the right mouse button, you can smoothly zoom in and out. As I say, if you release the Alt key and you just use the middle wheel on the mouse button, you can just zoom in and out just quickly, so you can manipulate things. So Alt key, left, middle, right, and also the W key, highlighting and moving an object, E key to rotate the object, R key to scale the object. We've also got the Q key just to select. And that's all we want to do with this session. To end this, our main first session was basically just to create a little cityscape with maybe cylinders, polygon cubes, and you can put the odd sphere in here every now and then. Okay, and we'll just finish it there. Thank you very much.